2 million people die of malaria every year. In Africa, many people look to God for deliverance. Religion is often the first line of defense against mosquitoes and against malaria. Superstition is rife too. That makes things difficult for scientists trying to fight the disease. Faith was also the issue 3,500 years ago in Egypt. The Bible tells us that the waters of the Nile were undrinkable, and a plague of frogs pursued people into their houses. God visited punishment upon Pharaoh, but he refused to bow to the Israelites. God then spoke through Moses, "If thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies." Every grain of dust became a pest. Flies, horseflies, lice, and mosquitoes became a torment for the people of Egypt and their animals.
In the Old Testament, the next plague was a plague of midges, and these midges would have bred very rapidly because they would have lived off the decaying food they had of the fish, the decaying food of the fish, and the decaying frogs. They would have lived off those, and they wouldn't have been eaten because normally the frogs ate the midges, and the frogs had died. What we do know, particularly from Hebrew literature, from the Bible, is that they realized that people could be infectious, and those infectious people had to be isolated. They understood that if someone had a disease, someone else could catch that disease. And I guess this would be observation. You know, if a father in the family got a disease, then this would spread to the children and to the wife. But I don't think they understood that mosquitoes would spread malaria, for example. I don't think they had that understanding.
3,500 years after Moses, Lake Victoria in East Africa. It is not the ideal it appears. Malaria is still one of the principal causes of death on these shores. In Kenya alone, over 50,000 children die of the disease every year. Poverty is widespread. Many Kenyans live without running water in primitive conditions. Hygiene is poor. Mosquitoes are attracted by stagnant water. At night, they and other insects swarm right outside homes. In Africa, a child dies of malaria every 30 seconds. Only female mosquitoes bite. They need blood for their eggs to grow. They inject Plasmodium, the malaria parasite, into the skin along with their saliva. The Plasmodium reproduces rapidly in the blood, destroying blood cells. Recurrent bouts of fever weaken the victims until they die. In some places, improved living conditions have actually contributed to the spread of malaria. Nowadays, rural Kenyans build their houses of brick. Clay is dug up and moulded into bricks. In the last 20 years, more and more small brickworks have sprung up, creating more and more stagnant pools. Standing water is a perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes. The brickmakers' pools are partly responsible for the sharp rise in malaria in the region. Access to water is highly prized in Kenya. In many areas, water for drinking and washing clothes is scarce and expensive. People and mosquitoes vie for the same resources. No one pays any attention to the mosquito larvae in the water. Very few are aware of the link between mosquitoes and malaria. Without human intervention, the mosquitoes will go on multiplying. This has to change. Every year, 500 million people contract malaria. The pathogens have become resistant. Many cheap medicines on the shelves for decades are now ineffective. Africa doesn't have the money to develop new treatments. Stefan Bormann, a doctor from Germany, is reluctant to leave the Africans to their fate. He's running a trial program to fight malaria in Kenya. Dr. Bormann's strategy is multi-pronged. It involves killing the mosquitoes and draining their breeding areas, but it's also about helping with information, disease prevention and new drugs. None of these methods has proved very successful on its own. The hope is that a combination of them will be. The details of the daily lives and sicknesses of 30,000 locals are being entered in a database. Dr. Bormann's laboratory is in this modern clinic on the coast. Africa has suffered years of neglect, but now things are finally on the move.
Malaria ist ganz klar eine Erkrankung der armen Länder. Also in den letzten 40 Jahren ist Malaria-Forschung und auch Malaria-Bekämpfung sehr vernachlässigt worden.
The first step is to stop the spread of malaria. Stefan Bormann is working together with Charles Mbogo. Dr. Mbogo heads the Mosquito Scouts of Malindi, a town not far from Mombasa. Before every sortie, the Scouts discuss their strategy. These people come from the slums and know the problem well. They set out several times a week, a volunteer force of Mozzie militia, who comb the shanty towns for potential mosquito breeding grounds. That is, for pools of standing water and blocked drains. Breeding sites are marked with GPS coordinates. This field study is unique in Africa.
When we are trying to do this, and what we train the Mosquito Scouts is to inform the municipal council to drain the water. And once the water is drained, then there's no stagnant water being left behind. And after that, then we are happy with the situation.
But all too often, the Kenyan authorities react too slowly, or not at all. Then the Mosquito Scouts get the slum dwellers to take matters into their own hands. No water, no mosquitoes. The slogan is proving effective. Increasingly, people are reporting pools of stagnant water to the Mosquito Scouts. The women especially are getting involved. It's their children who are suffering. They're digging ditches to drain the breeding areas. It's hard work, but it's effective, and the first step on the road to curbing the spread of malaria in Africa. Other wetlands are sprayed with the bacterial insecticide BTI, robbing any remaining larvae of the chance to hatch. Kenya is committed to natural insect control. The government has so far refused to use DDT, even though the controversial chemical is being used in neighbouring countries. The Kenyans are concerned about the effect of DDT on public health. Local women sewing mosquito nets. The battle to curb malaria has had the side effect of creating jobs, and there's still a huge need for more nets. Only about a quarter of all Kenyans sleep under mosquito nets, and many of those nets have holes in them. Later, the nets are soaked in a vegetable-based insecticide. New Mosquito Scouts are taught how to do it. It's important to do it properly because the insecticide needs to soak in. The effect lasts for 5 years. Then the nets must be treated once again. In poor neighbourhoods, mosquito scouts hand the nets out free, especially to women with children. Many people have to be persuaded to use them. They're afraid that the fine mesh of the nets will cause nightmares or trap evil spirits. The scouts demonstrate how to hang the nets properly. Finally, they help people overcome their fears and slip under the net. The scheme seems to be working. The first test results show that using a mosquito net reduces the risk of contracting malaria by 50%. The mosquito scouts also hand out light traps, battery-powered lamps that attract mosquitoes and poison them. Educating the population about malaria is crucial. Where does the disease come from? And what's the link with mosquitoes? Often it's the children who are open to new ideas and ready to abandon the old superstitions. Stefan Bormann is going to visit a bush clinic. These small hospitals are built close to where rural people live. That means shorter journeys and less of a delay before treatment. The patients are given regular checkups. Bormann visits the bush clinics as often as possible. The course of each illness is noted and assessed. In order to understand how the disease spreads, the doctors are monitoring the health of 30,000 people in Kilifi district. In the daytime, the mosquitoes hide beneath the dark roofs of the houses close to the brickworks pools. ICIP staff have come to test how effective their measures are. They're going to spray a plant-based insecticide. Any mosquitoes they kill will fall onto the white sheets. In this enclosed space, the mosquitoes don't stand a chance. The insecticide is a pyrethroid, a fast-working agent derived from chrysanthemums and made in Kenya. It's harmless to humans. The poison takes 10 minutes to work. It's important that the children get the message that something can be done about mosquitoes. The buzzing has stopped. Time to collect the catch. In front of everyone, the mosquitoes are counted. The insect experts check each cloth in turn. Their trained eye quickly tells them which species of mosquito they have poisoned. Here, close by the brickworks, the number of mosquitoes has been dropping year by year, a measure of their success. In the ICIP labs, researchers have found a new ally in the fight against mosquitoes. A jumping spider. Its giant eyes can seek out anything that is red. It too needs blood to survive. The spider ignores male mosquitoes. But if a scientist introduces a female full of blood, the spider quickly responds. The mosquito's red abdomen sends a powerful signal. The mosquito has no idea it's being stalked. The killer spider sneaks up on the female while she is resting. The spider pounces on its victim and sucks the blood. In Africa, these spiders often shelter inside houses. Tests suggest that fewer mosquitoes survive in homes where there are also spiders. It's not yet clear how the spider's potential can be harnessed, but there are still more bioweapons. The tiny robber fly. It targets the larvae of the Anopheles mosquito by sitting on the edge of a pool and awaiting its victim. Each robber fly can eat several larvae per day. Robber flies are common and could be bred and released into mosquito breeding areas. The research is at an early stage, but it is advancing rapidly. The children treated with artemisinin are regularly checked by Stefan Bormann's team. So far, there have been no problems. But the doctors know there is no such thing as a miracle cure. Only if all the different measures are used together and a whole population changes its behavior do they have a chance to control malaria for good. The first results are encouraging.
Es ist so, dass wir seit über einem Jahr weniger Malariafälle in Kilifi-Distrikt sehen. Wir wissen immer noch nicht, ob es damit zusammenhängt, dass die Malaria-Transmission, die Übertragung der Malaria von der Mücke auf den Menschen halt zurückgegangen ist. Es kann damit zusammenhängen, dass es weniger Regen gibt in dem Gebiet. Aber wir denken auch, dass unsere eigene Arbeit dazu beigetragen hat.
Life outside the cities and the tourist areas is slowly changing. Here in Kilifi, a start has been made, thanks to the work of Stefan Bormann and his team. People know more about mosquitoes and how to protect themselves against them, and they seek medical help more readily. But a lot of work is still needed to avert the threat mosquitoes pose in Kenya. Mosquitoes are moving into areas where they've never been seen before. Malaria is coming to the Alps, one result of global warming. It's a new challenge for scientists. They may never entirely win the battle against the mosquito.